to another exciting episode of bringing Jesus back into focus. He was made very blurry 1700 years ago when the corrupt Christian church leaders under Constantine, Emperor Constantine of Rome, around 313 AD, once he stopped persecuting the Christians. Unfortunately, the Christians caved in to Constantine's requests, and Roman soldiers were allowed to become Christians, and they could go and kill other children. Up until then, all followers of Jesus, the leaders of the movement of the spiritual way of love and non-violence that leads you to the heavenly spiritual world, and a spiritual being that's the life force of that world is only pure love, which is why our spiritual body has to be clean when we leave our body of flesh behind. They were all pacifists, thrown into the lions, crucified, Jews stoned them to death, all that sort of thing. They never killed anyone. But then, unfortunately, the church leaders were corrupted, and so they became worshippers of the Jewish God Yahweh. They converted Christians back actually to being Jews, which was a great tragedy. Jesus was still there in the mix, but they mixed the new wine and poured it into the old wine. They put the new beautiful spiritual loving creator of love and the spiritual world that's only love. If you want to go there, you've got to be only love, Jesus said. They poured it back into the Jewish religion, which worships two gods. It's not monotheistic. They've got a brutal, murdering, vengeful war god, whom they called Yahweh. We have to say Yahweh one. Then they've got another God of love your neighbour as yourself, even love a foreigner who is amongst you as if they are Jewish. That's in Leviticus, as yourself. Now that's the God of love, you see. Murder and kill foreigners, like at Jericho, steal everything, kill every man, woman and child, take all the silver, gold and stuff back to the temple of Yahweh. That's the war God. Love the foreigner as yourself, as if they are a Jew. That's the God of love. Two completely different gods. It's dualistic. They worship only one body called Yahweh, but it's a two-headed, perverted God. The trouble is, you see, that the corrupt Christians laid that over Jesus and the singularity of love. So Jesus not only became the child of this beautiful, loving, spiritual creator of love and non-violence, he then they shifted him back to be the son of this violent, brutal killer, a murdering war god. The same God as Mars. The same God as Ares of the Greeks, Mars of the Romans, Sekhmet of the Egyptians. Yahweh one is a stinking war god, murderer, just like Mars, just like Ares, just like Sekhmet. Read the definition of the war god Yahweh in the Old Testament. You'll find it all over the place. It's a brutal, murdering, revengeful, etc., etc. Exact same description of Mars, Ares, and Sekhmet. All brutal killers. War gods. They all had one. The Jews had one. Now, the problem I've got, of course, I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was 16 because they were teaching this lie that there's only one God in the whole Bible. The trouble is, of course, the Romans had a separate temple for their God of Peace and Love called Pax. The Greeks had Irene, their temple for a goddess of peace and love. So they were honest religions. The Jews is a deceitful religion because they put their God of love called Yahweh. Wait a minute, isn't your God of war called Yahweh? That's right. Well, shouldn't you call your God of love and peace another name? Oh, no. No, you see, if we call them by the same name, we can kill and murder and steal and commit genocide, and our God still loves us, because our God is also a God of love and murder. It's a very deceiving, cunning, and dualistic religion. And unfortunately now the Jewish Christian religions are all dualistic. They worship Yahweh. All the Jewish Christians I know, they believe that the two-headed God of the Jews is the God of Jesus. I said, no, it's not. So my job is to clarify this and clear it up, which I'm doing. I had to put, first of all, I had to rewrite the Gospels using the Greek interlinears. So this is the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, published a year ago. And you can buy that around the world. And that'll give you a clearer view of his teachings and what they mean in a translation which is more universal. Instead of God the Father, for example, I use loving spiritual creator. It's genderless. I say she anyway for the loving creator. It doesn't really matter. She's beyond gender or he's beyond gender. And I remove what are called the Jewish apocalyptic overlays. I remove them. They're lies. I also correct the very wrong Greek translations in the Jewish Christian Gospels around the world. There's some that are quite wrong and incorrectly translated. And so I've corrected those. So I've removed all Jewish redundancies and Jewish overlays. It's still written traditionally. In fact, some of the chapters or some of the sayings of Jesus, you can find them almost word for word in most Gospels in the world, most Bibles. But there are others you'll find the language is quite different. And yet at the same time, it gives you hopefully a clearer understanding of this beautiful life force of love that he's talking about and himself, and he's at one with this beautiful loving life force. So I use slightly different terms to help you understand this is a beautiful loving life force that can come into you and me, and it did come into him. He opened up to it, received it, and he said we can too. So that's published, and this is the teachings of Jesus Unplugged, and this episode's about the apocalyptic overlays put onto Jesus in the Gospels, which are all false. Jesus was never an apocalyptic Jew. He was never that. They were put in to link him to the stinking Revelation book, which is a slanderous book. It should be ripped out. It's an evil book. They had to put the Revelation references, which all refer back to the Jewish religion. That's what Revelation is all about, the book of Daniel. And so my Teachings Unplugged book untangles Jesus and the loving spiritual creator from the Jewish religion. You see, I've had to separate the new wine from the old wine because they've mixed it together, and Jesus said, don't do that. I didn't worry about it. I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was, like 50 years ago because of the lie they were teaching, but I took Jesus with me. I knew he was only love and non-violence, so therefore the loving creator is only love and non-violence, and I never bothered about what the Jewish Christian churches were doing until recently, and I thought, well, I've had to stop work because of an illness, and I was busy caring for my mother and sister, so I thought, well, now I'll have a look and see how the other churches are teaching Jesus, and I was shocked. Some of them are synagogues. They've got the Christian cross up there, but all they talk about is the Old Testament Jewish two-headed God, and Jesus is coming back on the clouds with the two-headed war God to murder, kill, make people sick, and start starving people to death. I was shocked. So I had to do something about it. This is the spiritual teachings of Jesus, are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. This is the back cover of the book, by the way. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind, filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator. Then our two bodies, one made of the earth and one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only true spiritual children of light and love can enter the heavenly spiritual world of love. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. So that's the back of the teachings of Jesus Unplugged, which is about to be published on the 11th of January 2026. So that should be out any moment. It's the first edition. I've been very ill and a lot of pain doing it. Later on, when I'm hopefully recovered, I will do an even more, a better worded edition. But there's enough truth in this to help you break the hold of the poisonous Jewish religion that it has over Jesus and the divine loving spiritual creator. It's got a poisoning effect. And Jesus said not to mix them together because he knew the Jewish religion worshipped two gods. He knew that. He said to them at one point, you're worshipping Satan. You're the children of Satan. He was a murderer and a liar from the start. That's a war god. All war gods are murderers. He knew that. Now, this is a prayer I say. I say this every single day. It reminds me that Jesus clearly told us, you've got two bodies. The one that dies, the body of the flesh, he said the only thing you can do with that really is feed it to the vultures. There's nothing in it. They're his words. It's in the Gospels. It's a beautiful a teaching, and all the Jewish Christian churches avoid it because it's the truth. He also says, though, that the other body in your one body, that we seem to have, one body, but there's two bodies in the one body. There's two in a single bed. There are two women grinding at a millstone. There are two standing in a field. There are two on a couch. One is sent forth, redundant, dismissed, no longer of any use. One is taken to be near to. They've cut out the words, though. Near to our loving Creator in heaven is what he'd say. So this is the prayer to center myself in my spiritual body, which is the only body that lives on after the death of the flesh. Our body of flesh does not rise up from the soil again. Sorry, that doesn't happen. Jesus said so. Now, this is the prayer, so just imagine you're sitting there with two bodies. And think of your spiritual body like water in a vase. Your physical body is the vase, but inside you there's another beautiful, glowing spiritual body. You can't see it, but it's there. It's very beautiful, it's glowing, it's soft, it's gentle, it's kind. It has a mind of its own, which is only love, which is your mind now, but your mind now is cluttered with dualistic thinking. Once you clear it out, you'll have the clear light mind experience of Buddha and Jesus. Jesus said, clean the inside of the cup out and your whole body will be full of light. Buddha said, clean out the negativities from your mind and you will have the clear light mind experience. They both had the same experience. Pure love. So this is the prayer. If you want to sit quietly anywhere and just read this prayer or think about it, it'll help you think of your spiritual body and your mind will come into it more easily. Daily prayer to center yourself into spirit. As I rest upon this earth, the Holy One, she will give birth to who I really am, awakening me from clay and sand, a spiritual child of the divine, with only her love that fills my mind. To every creature I will be kind in every single land, for this is truly who I am, a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world, born out of the earth, to bring her love to children in need and help guide them home to heaven as she has guided me. Through the spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave us to be just as he, a spiritual child of love on earth. To be my spiritual self, my true self and your true self, we have to only have a mind of love. That's the clear light mind. That's what leaves the body when the body of flesh dies. The logo I use is the Spirit Earth logo with the cross and the dove on top of it. Jesus' body of flesh died and returned to the earth. It did not rise again. He flew away in his spiritual body, the dove. So in the circle there are two bodies. We have two bodies with us now. One is feed it to the vultures, he said, it's finished. The other one's the one you want to keep clean, healthy and ready to enter heaven. Heaven is a place of only love. There is a spiritual mind, a consciousness, a living being, spiritual being whose entire mind is only love. Jesus is only love. How do you think we get into heaven? We have to become only love. It's fairly simple, really. But then comes the challenge. In a violent, brutal world where people are going to hurt you, people are going to start wars who are shadow figures, children of Satan. So how do we deal with them? Well, Jesus explains how to do it. But you got to follow his words. So you got to read them first. Okay, now this is the Apocalyptic Overlays chapter put on to Jesus. You have to understand this. Matthew in particular is an apocalyptic Jew, and he has overwritten so much of the gospel, or someone else has put it in. It may not be the original writer of the Gospel of Matthew because you've got the Sermon on the Mount. But there's got this other gobbledygook Jewish Book of Daniel crap going on. Jesus coming back on the clouds, end of time, destruction, blah, blah, blah. Jesus is going to be there. That's rubbish. That's an apocalyptic overlay, heavily, heavily, heavily overlaid in Matthew. Not so much in the others, but heavily in Matthew. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the writer of Matthew who wrote the book of Revelation. That'd make perfect sense to me. So they have to be removed, and I'll explain to you how they're false. And Jesus has got nothing to do with coming back on the clouds to put sores on your body, starve people to death, and start wars between different armies. That can't be Jesus. That's a satanic bastard coming back on the clouds. All right then, apocalyptic overlays put onto Jesus. The book of Revelation is a cunning, well-crafted, deceitful decoy or subterfuge and slanders Jesus and the pure, loving spiritual life force and loving life force that empowers our spiritual bodies and souls to have true spiritual life that Jesus leads us all to. It leads unwary followers of Jesus away from our loving spiritual creator who is only love and the heavenly spiritual world of love, back into a Jewish trap to worship the two-headed God of the Jews with a brutal Godhead Yahweh, one of war, revenge, thieving and murder, and a Godhead Yahweh two of limited love on one body called Yahweh, two for the price of one. A divided God, not at one with love and non-violence, as Jesus taught the real loving spiritual creator is. Different God, Sorry, Jewish Christian children, you've been conned. We know the gospel writers copied certain things from each other. It is difficult to know how many of the gospel writers were initially involved in overlaying the apocalyptic sayings attributed to Jesus, and then further overlaying the lie that Jesus was going to return at the apocalypse and also cause it to happen. The reason these appear throughout the Gospels to varying degrees is to deliberately link Jesus and our loving Creator to the Jewish book of Daniel and the false book of Revelation, to consolidate the lying slander said about them. So they're trying to destroy your connection to heaven, and they're trying to slander Jesus and paint him as some sort of Jewish satanic whatever. And to distract followers from only focusing on becoming like him and being transformed by his spiritual teachings and way of love to bring their spirits alive. Instead, they get followers to keep waiting for him to return and save them. But he said to follow him to where he has gone by becoming a spiritual child of love on earth now, by awakening into your spiritual body and soul to be ready to enter the heavenly spiritual world. Jesus is not coming back, but will always help us get to where he is if we just follow his words. We are not alone. Heaven will always help us. But each one of us must choose by ourselves to become a spiritual child of love. Jesus can't do it for us. Matthew fabricating apocalyptic overlays. Matthew is the real culprit. He's the big culprit. I do not believe Jesus ever talked about himself in this apocalyptic Son of Man coming in the clouds way at the end of time to throw bad children into hell and take the good children to heaven with him. Jesus in fact taught we must listen to and understand his words and teachings, become transformed by them, and follow him to where he has gone, the heavenly spiritual world of love. Matthew seems to be the ringleader in falsifying these apocalyptic sayings attributed to Jesus. Whether it was done deliberately to distort who Jesus really was and destroy his spiritual way of perfect love and the loving Creator, or whether Matthew thought his fanciful embellishments would help the Jews follow Jesus, we will never know. Or maybe another writer has overwritten Matthew, possibly the apocalyptic Jew responsible for the revelation slander. But one thing is certain to me, they are all false and misleading, whoever did them. We have a very revealing insight into the corruption of the words of Jesus at Matthew 13:47 that exposes how this gospel writer or someone who overwrote Matthew took a saying of Jesus and deliberately distorted and perverted it to suit this apocalyptic overlay, putting it directly into the mouth of Jesus. It is a fabrication and lie, because by the grace of heaven, we have the original correct version in the Thomas Gospel to compare it with. That's why they wanted the Thomas Gospel destroyed. But luckily, they found one in a cave in Egypt, buried in a jar. Someone saved it. Thank heavens. It shows you the proof. It provides you with the proof that the Gospels have been altered and poisoned to distort Jesus' message. Now, this is the Thomas Gospel. This is the original saying of Jesus. You can be sure of this because it matches others. The one great pearl, the treasure in the field, these sorts of things. This is the same type of saying Jesus said. It is correct. It is accurate. It makes perfect sense with his dialogue about you and I have to wake up and find the one beautiful spiritual life we have in us right now. It's the one great thing that's in you. It's the treasure in the field of the flesh. So listen to the correct version in Thomas, and then I'll show you how Matthew's deliberately perverted it for his own apocalyptic agenda, or someone's overwritten it. We don't know, but someone's distorted it. Someone's deliberately distorted it. The original and correct saying of Jesus from the Thomas Gospel, Jesus said, "A person is like a wise fisherman who cast his net into the sea and drew it all up full of little fish from below. Among them he found one good and great fish. The wise fisherman threw all the little fish back into the sea, and without any hesitation he chose to keep the greatest fish. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear." Whoever understands what I'm really saying, you'll understand what I'm saying. That's what Jesus is saying. Here Jesus is following on from finding the one great pearl, saying, and finding the great treasure hidden in the field, saying, and now finding the one great and good fish among many little ones, saying, so they're matching. They match perfectly. The one great and good thing Jesus is referring to is our spiritual body and soul mind of love within our body of flesh that we have to find and become at one with to have eternal heavenly life. See, that's your true identity. That's the thing you want most of all. It's eternal. That's the one good thing. We can recall Jesus actually talking about this to Martha when he said, Martha, you are worried about many things, but only one thing is necessary. And Mary has chosen that one good thing, and it will not be taken away from her. Now, there's the one good thing. Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet listening to his words, because the words will awaken in her spiritual identity, which is eternal, the one good thing you need in this world to get out of this place alive. Your spiritual body full of love, and you'll get out of here and live in a beautiful world. The one good thing, the one good fish, the one great good fish. We must detach ourselves from all the worldly, temporary, material things which are worthless in comparison, and let go of any little egotistical identities we may be living out of, and move into and become at one with this one great and good thing we have found within ourselves. This is our primary, true, spiritual, eternal identity and life, which we will have in the heavenly spiritual world of love. This original and accurate saying is about personal spiritual awakening and enlightenment. Matthew's version distorts this saying, and we'll see that in a second. See, the little fish here are just released back in, they just let go back into the ocean. And it's just one fisherman. And this one fisherman is wise. He has the wisdom to understand he has a spiritual body, Jesus is saying. The wise person understands you've got a spiritual body that doesn't die. Get into it. That's the one you keep. The little fish you let go of are the other identities. Oh, I'm a doctor, oh, I'm a lawyer, oh, I'm this, I'm that. They're just professional identities, little egotistical identities. They're little tiny little identities you have in the world for a little while. Your true identity is the real identity. The one good, great identity is your eternal spiritual life and your spiritual body and your soul mind of love. Now that is good. Worth getting that. Hang on to that one. You can let go of all the other identities. We just express ourselves through love. Now this is how Matthew distorted it. It's extraordinary to see this proof. And I'm happy to show it to you because it's the truth. We've got the Gospel Thomas to prove it. Matthew poisoned, distorted, perverted the words for his own apocalyptic agenda. Or someone else did. Matthew 13:47, the net cast into the sea. Supposedly the parable, but it's the wrong one. It's been perverted. Matthew, or someone overriding Matthew, perverts this saying of Jesus in the following way. Matthew 13:47, Jesus said, the heavenly spiritual world of our loving Creator is like a fishing net that was cast into the sea and gathered some of every kind. Now immediately it's been altered. The first correct saying is a person, you and me. We're like a wise fisherman. Matthew's changed this now to the heavenly spiritual world of our loving Creator, heaven, is like a fishing net that was cast into the sea and gathered some of every kind. Sort of close there. And when it was full, they, not he, the wise fisherman, you and me personally, they, who are they? So there was a group of them. When it was full, they drew it up to the shore and sat down and collected the good fish. Suddenly the fish have changed from little to big. The good fish into vessels, but the bad fish they cast out. That's a complete distortion and perversion. The one good fish that you and I have to find within ourselves, the one good treasure in the field, the one great pearl, my spiritual identity of love before my body of flesh dies, suddenly becomes the good fish and the bad fish who are cast away. So Matthew altered the saying to set up the following false addition, attributing it to Jesus. And this is not in the Gospel of Thomas. Matthew's added this on as a complete lie and false. Matthew 13:49. Jesus then supposedly says, so Jesus apparently says this, it's wrong, it's a lie, he's altered it, it's perverted. But then Jesus apparently carries on after saying the good and the bad fish. He didn't say that. Matthew's distorted it. Jesus then says, so it will be at the end of the age, the angels will come forth and separate the wicked from amongst the righteous and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. That has absolutely nothing to do with the original whatsoever. It's an apocalyptic, lying, filthy overlay put onto Jesus. Matthew altered the focus and changed the parable ending to act as a segue into adding his own apocalyptic words and falsely attributed them to Jesus. This is a lie. These are words put in Jesus' mouth that never were spoken by Jesus. We can tell because we've got the original in the Thomas Gospel. Beautiful proof. No wonder they tried to destroy it. This version is not about personal spiritual development and awakening as Jesus originally intended, but it has been deliberately changed and distorted to link Jesus with the apocalypse, where he destroys all evil children and saves the good children. The Revelation rubbish. This links him back to the two-headed God of the Jews again, and the book of Revelation lies. And the correct end of the age is the day we all die, when we all reap what we sow right then, not some distant apocalyptic time that comes from the book of Daniel, a Jewish book. And it obviously does not match the preceding two sayings of Jesus in Matthew about the kingdom of heaven being like one great pearl and one great treasure. Matthew deliberately alters the focus by replacing the one wise fisherman, you and me, who represents all of us as individuals learning to become spiritual, with the pronoun they. This convenient distortion allows Matthew to introduce angels into the false storyline. He alters the fish from being all little unimportant ones and one great good one that represents our search for our spiritual awakening and true spiritual identity into being bad fish cast out and good fish who are saved. Then he introduces his false apocalyptic end-of-time overlay, attributing these fake words to Jesus, where Jesus says angels from heaven will separate the good from the bad at the apocalypse and throw the bad children into hell. Angels from heaven are going to do that, who are filled only with love. Demons might do it. Satan's kiddies might do it. Not angels from heaven, that's for sure. They'll only try to save you. Angels are pure in spirit and only empowered by the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator, whose love shines on the good and on the evil. Angels only save us from harm and suffering like Jesus himself. They cannot hurt us in any way. It's a filthy, stinking lie that's been put in about. Even Jesus is slandered, our loving creator is slandered, and angels are slandered. It's all Jewish poisoning. Right. Matthew loves the Jewish book of Daniel and ties Jesus into it any chance he can get or create himself, and that is the truth. It's known as the Jewish gospel. These are dualistic Jewish overlays to replace the loving creator of Jesus with the two-headed God of the Jews and destroy the spiritual message and way of pure, singular love that Jesus gave for us to find within ourselves. This is a serious Jewish apocalyptic distortion that runs throughout the Gospels to pervert and take followers away from understanding and concentrating on the words of Jesus and become personally transformed and awoken into our spiritual body and true identity to become the same as he was, a spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world of love. Instead, this represents the two-headed God of the Jews who destroys its children who do wrong and slanders Jesus and our loving creator by putting these words in his mouth. They are false, evil, and should be destroyed, taken out of all gospels in the world. You won't find those words easily in any truthful gospel. It's horrible. Anyway, other false apocalyptic sayings. Matthew adds other false sayings throughout the Gospels about the apocalypse and Jesus returning. At 10:23, he has Jesus saying, "Truly you will not finish going through all the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes." Another reference to Daniel at 11:20-24. Then Jesus began to denounce the cities in which most of his miracles were done because they would not repent. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the miracles had occurred in Tyre or Sidon, which occurred in you, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. Nevertheless, I say to you, it will be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon in the day of judgment than for you. And you, Capernaum, will not be exalted to heaven. You will descend into Hades. For if the miracles had occurred in Sodom which occurred in you, it would have remained to this day. I say it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom in the day of judgment than for you. That's the war god of the Jews in Revelation. Destruction. That's the genocide of Jericho stuff. Matthew has Jesus falsely referring to the day of judgment to come at the apocalypse, another reference to Daniel and Revelation, and has Jesus condemning whole townships of people to hell, which goes against who Jesus was and what he taught. Collective punishment is a hallmark of the revengeful Jewish Godhead of War, Yahweh one, and it's all through the Old Testament. Matthew has contrived these words himself to support his own agenda, or someone's overlaid them onto him. The correct sower of the seed parable of Jesus. This is the true correct sower of the seed parable, Jesus said. Hear and understand the parable of the sower of the seed. When anyone hears the words of the kingdom of the heavenly spiritual world and does not understand them, then other bad things can come into their life and rob them of the chance for the words to take root in their hearts and souls. This is the one who receives the seed by the wayside. He who received the seeds of the words on stony places is he who hears the words and immediately receives them with joy, but he has not taken them deeply enough into his heart and soul, and fully committed to them, so endures with them only for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises against him, because he is following the spiritual way of the words of heaven, he stumbles and falls away from the words. He who receives seed among the thorns is he who hears the words, but the cares of this material world and the deceitfulness of riches overtake and choke the words in him, and he becomes spiritually unfruitful. He who receives the seeds of the words of the heavenly spiritual world on good ground is the one who hears the words and understands their spiritual meaning and bears spiritual fruits, some 100-fold, some 30, some 60. This original correct parable of the sower of the seed, which represents, the seeds represent Jesus' words, which he says will save you, if you understand them, not his blood, his words, the seeds he's planting in your mind, if they grow, they'll help transform you into a spiritual body, which gets ready to leave. And another one dies, unfortunately. This original correct parable of the sower of the seed has Jesus explaining that not everyone will listen to his words, follow them, and be transformed by them. He then lists a few reasons why this happens, so we can avoid them happening to us. It is a simple parable making us aware of the traps we can fall into that stifle our spiritual awakening. Jesus never says those who do not listen to his words or do not follow them will be thrown into hell. That's not there. We must always remember Jesus actually said, if anyone hears my words and does not keep them, I do not judge them. They're his words in the Gospels. That's the proper, correct, original seed parable. His words are the seeds, you hear them. Oh, I don't believe that rubbish. I may go to the casino and have a few beers. I think I'll rob the bank on the way home. You don't follow his words at all. Others think, oh, these are really great, really great. I think I'll be a pacifist. Oh, wait a minute, these people are attacking us, so I better pick up a gun now. I'm not a pacifist anymore. And then, of course, some get, oh, these words are really lovely. I think I'll go to church every week. But let's get in our Ferrari and have our $400 million house renovated and, as you walk past homeless people on the street. But they go to church every Sunday, The wealth of riches overshadow their spiritual body. But other children hear the words and understand them, and they awaken into their spiritual life on earth, and they're the ones you see out. You don't ever hear about these people. They're working with the Salvation Army, out on the streets at nights, helping the prostitutes or the drug addicts. These are the most beautiful, powerful children in the world, because they're just serving others in need, giving their life to them. They are really the leaders in the world. Or is Donald Trump a great leader? Let me think. Oh, no. That's right. What a crackpot. So that's the original parable. Now, Matthew. Now, this is a completely false parable. There is a chance that Jesus may have originally said something about, some seeds turn bad, some seeds turn good, some children turn good, some turn bad, and they're going to suffer, reap what they sow. There's a possibility that it may have been an original little parable about children who go bad, end up reaping what they sow, hell is spreading realizations. Good children are, taken to heaven. But the way Matthew's written it, the seeds, Jesus uses the word seeds to represent his words. They save your life. Matthew's taken that analogy of the seeds that Jesus used quite correctly and beautifully, his words, and he's made that into the good seeds and the bad seeds. Remember the fish parable? Jesus is saying the one good fish is just your spiritual body. Wake up to it, it's inside you. Let go of all your other little identities of ego. It's a personal parable about wake up to your true spiritual identity. Nothing about good and bad fish, but Matthew took it and perverted it into good and bad fish. Now he's taken the seed parable. The analogy is seed represents his words, beautiful words to wake you up. Matthew's distorted it again. Now the seeds become the good and bad children again. Just like the fish, the good and bad children again. The evil and the good. Apocalypse, throw into hell. You see the perversion? Someone's taken it and they've put this apocalyptic overlay. It's interesting they left the original in though. It's sort of, I guess they thought it's fairly it's a bit different and they could leave that and put in the apocalyptic one alongside it. And just change a few of the words, but it's still the seeds. And they got Jesus saying it. I think it's completely false, but we'll see. We'll see when we get to heaven. Was that one false? Oh, it certainly was, yes. Or, no, you're wrong. It actually was correct. I think it's false. Matthew 13:36, the false wheat and tares saying. This is a falsified version produced by Matthew of the correct preceding sower of the seed parable that Jesus gave that has no mention of any child being thrown into hell. Again, he has taken the theme of the original spoken by Jesus involving seeds that are sown in the same way he took the original fish in the net cast into the sea and created his own perverted false version concerning them by changing them again to represent bad and good children. The seeds have been altered. The fish were altered. Matthew creates a totally new false storyline to feed into his own apocalyptic agenda, painting Jesus as coming on the clouds at the apocalypse to bring an end to the world, murdering the evil children and saving the good. This whole parable is made up by him or someone else to pervert the original meaning of the sower parable, just as Matthew perverted the net in the sea parable to feed his own apocalyptic agenda. This is Matthew's false altered version, or an additional version. Let's say it's a false version that's been added in on top of the original. They're both in there together. They took out the original Thomas net in the sea one altogether. You can't find that. That's gone. They thought they destroyed it. Bad luck. Someone hid a copy. Sorry, you've been found out. Jesus explained the tares and wheat parable to the disciples, apparently. Jesus said, "He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom of heaven, but the tares are the sons of evil. The enemy who sowed the tares is Satan. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels." The apocalypse. Angels. What are they going to do? Who love us. "Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire," oh, here we go, "so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire." It's the same Matthew net in the sea saying. "There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of heaven. He who has ears, let him hear." Matthew again perverts a parable of spiritual advice given to us by Jesus. turning it into the apocalyptic end of the world, with Jesus at the controls, changing the seeds that Jesus used to originally represent his spiritual words from heaven into this bad seed and the good seed, children. Exactly what he did also did with the fish parable. And he has Jesus instigating the murder of the lost sheep by sending angels again to throw them all into hell, just like his perverted version of the net in the seed parable. This is a lie, fabricated, put in on top of the original beautiful parable of the seeds, where Jesus simply warns us, these words are really important. Don't throw them away. Don't just be committed a little bit. You won't be transformed. Don't get distracted by riches. You won't wake up spiritually. Really believe these words and practice them, and you will become spiritual. It's just a beautiful advice, and with a simple little analogy of the traps we can fall into. But here, Matthew, there's no advice here about how to be good or anything from Jesus. It's just the good are going to be saved, bad are thrown into hell. You see, there's no advice here from Jesus about what to do to be the good seed. It's an apocalyptic lie, an overlay. It slanders Jesus and links him to the book of Revelation, which is the most filthy, slanderous book, I think, on the planet. So again, slandering angels. So he slanders angels as well here again, who can only love you. They're spiritual angels, are spiritual beings from heaven. The term angel means messenger, a messenger from heaven. Heaven's a place of pure love. Well, if you're pure love, you don't go throwing people into hell. You're supposed to save them out of hell, get them out of there. Throw them a line. Again, slandering angels and Jesus, who says he is a shepherd who saves lost sheep. I believe Matthew has deliberately distorted the words of Jesus and written this himself with his own interpretation of the original sower of the seed parable, like that done with the one big fish parable, or someone else has overwritten Matthew and added this false apocalyptic version. This is all based on the Jewish book of Daniel and Revelation, two Jewish books about the two-headed God Yahweh of the Jews. Going, not coming. At Matthew 16:27, Jesus supposedly says, "For the Son of Man is going in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then repay every man according to his deeds." Matthew is again linking Jesus to Daniel and the Apocalyptic Revelation Ruse book by simply adding the words "to come," flipping the direction. Oh, sorry, I didn't read the brackets. Sorry, this is the Matthew version. Please excuse me. Matthew flipped the direction. That's what the point of this is. He altered the Greek word's meaning. The Greek word for coming and going is the same Greek word. It depends on what your inflection is, what your meaning is. If Jesus says, "I'm going over to visit Bob," or "I'm coming from Bob's," "I'm going to Bob's," the same word going and coming is the exact same Greek word. So this is the problem. Matthew's flipped it. At Matthew 16:27, Jesus supposedly says, "For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then repay every man according to his deeds." Matthew is again linking Jesus to Daniel in the Apocalyptic Revelation Ruse book by simply adding the words "to come," flipping the direction. Jesus actually said he was going in the spiritual glory of our loving spiritual creator, which is his spiritual body. He was saying, "I'm going." Matthew 16:28. So this follows on, this dialogue, and you can see what Jesus was really saying was, "I'm about to go," not "I'm coming." "I'm going to come." That's false. It's a lie. Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who shall not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom." Matthew's flipped it. The Greek word translated as coming in the Gospels can legitimately also mean going. Going is the correct translation in this case. Jesus knew he would soon be killed by the Jews. Here he is simply telling them that some of them will still be alive when they see him killed and ascend in spirit or go into heaven. That's all he's saying. He's saying, some of you standing here, you'll still be alive when you see them kill me, and I will be going to heaven. That's what he's saying, which was 100% accurate. Matthew's flipped it. Very simple, just altered the meaning of the word going. It's the same word in Greek. The English translations have shifted it. Matthew has distorted the words of Jesus by changing going to coming and providing a way to link Jesus again to Revelation and Daniel by having Jesus say the word coming to provide some credence for the false Revelation ruse book to be believed as authentic by gullible followers. I believe these words that Matthew wrote are deliberately distorted from the original words Jesus spoke. Matthew changed them to cast Jesus as the promised Messiah in the book of Daniel, coming on the clouds of heaven at the Revelation Apocalypse to kill the bad children and save the good children. This apocalyptic agenda of Matthew is seen throughout his gospel, pure slander and a very Jewish Old Testament two-headed God idea and belief from the book of Daniel and elsewhere. Jesus simply said, "Follow me and my spiritual way of love and non-violence to heaven." So whether the original sort of English transcriptions shifted the Greek word from, they chose it to be, coming instead of going, whether Matthew did it. If the original Greek translations with the first English translations, if they were wrongly translated, it may have been an innocent accident or it may have been a deliberate, attempt to continue this rubbish story that Jesus is coming back at the end of the world to kill and murder and starve and make people sick. Clearly that's not Jesus, is it? Distorted wedding invitation parable. In the original invitation parable of Jesus, we are told that everyone is invited to follow the spiritual way of Jesus to the heavenly spiritual world, but the first group invited declined to come for various worldly reasons that Jesus lists, just as he listed similar reasons in the sower parable for not wanting to become spiritual. So others are invited to join Jesus in the heavenly spiritual world by following his way, and anyone who prepares themselves spiritually by following his way of love and non-violence can enter. But those not robed in love and non-violence cannot enter. Jesus does not kill anyone who rejects his invitation in this correct saying. As Jesus said, "If anyone hears my words and does not keep them, I do not judge them." So the original correct wedding invitation parable, invitations are sent out. Some say, I'm too busy. So the guy who's holding the wedding feast for his son, sort of thing, the divine loving spiritual creator, it's supposed to be in Jesus, his son. Go and get some people on the roadside, bring them in, bring anyone in who wants to come. So it becomes a universal message, you see. Part of the parable is this is a universal message. Anyone can come to heaven who follows the invitation. The invitation that Jesus sends out is become like me, become a spiritual child of love and non-violence like me. That's the invitation. Anyone can follow it. Anyone can have it. Anyone can accept it. Anyone can come in. Now the false Matthew 22:2 version, 22:7 version. So this is the false version of Matthew. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who sent out invitations for his son's wedding. But those who received them did not want to come for various worldly reasons. So the king sent invitations again to them, but they all said they were too busy to come, and some mistreated his messengers and even killed some of them. The king was enraged with anger and sent his armies and destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire. He then invited others who were willing to come." Matthew has added in, he's added in that bit where the king was outraged and sent his armies to kill those murderers who didn't want to, and set their city on fire. So some of the messengers were even killed, so he murdered them all who did that. That's the war god. Jesus doesn't do that. Love your enemies, remember? Pray for those who persecute you. The divine loving spiritual creator's love is like the sun that shines on the good and the evil. Here Matthew's got the idea is, of course, it's a king. The king is supposed to be God. The son getting married is supposed to be Jesus. And so God's really upset that some of the messengers that he sent out to bring people to meet Jesus and come to heaven, they even murdered some of the messengers. So this God killed them all. The Yahweh war god does that's for sure. Matthew has made up and added this sentence about killing those children who killed some of the messengers by putting the words in the mouth of Jesus which slander him and our loving creator. It's a very serious thing. You shouldn't put those words in the mouth of Jesus. It is not found in Luke's version of the same parable. See, Luke's is the better version. It hasn't got that. This is the way of the two-headed revengeful war god of the Jews, Yahweh one. not the way of our loving spiritual creator or Jesus. See Luke's, again, you can refer to Luke and see the correct version. That business about the king was enraged with anger, sent his army, destroyed those murderers and set the city on fire, that's not in Luke. You can tell that's more close to the original. So that's how you have to work it out. That's how you find the lies and the distortions that poison Jesus. But if you're a Jewish Christian, you're going to have trouble. But I'm lucky. I've never been a Jewish Christian. Hallelujah. So this is the way of the two-headed God. Yep, no worries about that. This is the way of the two-headed revengeful war God of the Jews, Yahweh one, not the way of a loving spiritual creator or Jesus. It is designed to deliberately muddy the waters of who Jesus really is and our loving spiritual creator, trying to lead all Christians astray and back into worshipping, guess who? The two-headed God, Yahweh of the Jews, with a revengeful, violent Godhead of war and a Godhead of limited love on one body. Jesus isn't about killing anyone. No matter what you do to him, he'll even let you kill his body of flesh. He won't kill yours. And neither will any true Christian. For the first 300 years, they were all pacifists. False apocalyptic words pinned to Jesus. Matthew 24. Here we see another obviously contrived false account by Matthew added onto a probable correct short answer of Jesus. This starts by the disciples pointing out to Jesus how wonderful the temple buildings look. Then Jesus simply replies by telling them that not one stone will be left standing on another, as they will all be thrown down. That's all Jesus says. The disciples later supposedly ask him, "Tell us, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" Jesus didn't mention anything about that in his answer, but suddenly Matthew's got the disciples asking it. This is clearly a contrived false segue question made up by either Matthew or the overwriter of Matthew to put words in the mouth of Jesus to again link him to the Revelation ruse book and the two-headed God of the Jews. Jesus never even mentions in his comment anything about the end of the age or his coming again, only that the temple will one day be destroyed. But the disciples ask him these other two questions. The false segue leads Jesus into supposedly making a rambling dialogue about the apocalypse, drawing from Revelations and Daniel again, about the abomination of desolation from Daniel appearing, famines, wars, earthquakes, the moon no longer giving us light, stars falling from the sky. He will send out his angels to gather the chosen ones, and he will be seen returning on the clouds of heaven like lightning. Now Jesus is saying all that apparently. Rubbish. That's a Matthew overwrite. That's a lie. It's false. It shouldn't be there. Jesus never said that. All he said was, yep, this whole temple's going to be soon all pulled down. All fall down. That's all he said. Which happened. All of this is Revelation and Daniel regurgitated by Matthew or someone who wants the followers of Jesus to believe he is the son of the Jewish two-headed God Yahweh, one of death, revenge and destruction. And it slanders the loving creator of Jesus and Jesus himself to destroy the spiritual way and teachings of love that Jesus gave us to follow to help us all enter the heavenly spiritual world of love after death. I do not believe this was said by Jesus, but is a fake addition by Matthew or someone else. But based on the many heavy Jewish overlays throughout Matthew, it would indicate Matthew is likely the one who made these things up and attributed them to Jesus. The two bodies teaching perverted in Matthew. Again, another perversion in Matthew. This is another teaching of Jesus that's been perverted by Matthew quite deliberately. And it destroys one of the key truths of Jesus, that you've got two bodies with you right now. The body of flesh, once it dies, fitted to the vultures, the other one leaves, your spiritual body. Then at the end of the false apocalyptic rambling attributed to Jesus, in Matthew 24:40, Matthew perverts the original message of one of the most important spiritual teachings of Jesus by attaching it to this apocalyptic made-up ramble. So after putting in this false ramble, Matthew then slots in another saying of Jesus and perverts it by attaching it to this ramble. He perverts the meaning of it by attaching it to this lie, you see. Very clever. He hijacks the powerful two bodies teachings of Jesus, where he clearly states we all have two bodies with us right now. One is a body of flesh that dies and can be fed to the vultures, and one is a spiritual body taken to be near to our loving Creator at the time of our death experience. That's when it happens. Matthew destroys its meaning by connecting it to Jesus returning at the end of this apocalyptic ramble. Jesus supposedly says, "For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For in those days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. There will be two men in a field. One will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding at the millstone. One will be taken and one will be left. Therefore, be on alert, for you do not know which day your Lord is coming." Now, Matthew has completely perverted and distorted the original saying of Jesus. There will be two men in a field. One will be taken, one will be left. Two women will be grinding at the millstone. One will be taken, one will be left. And the other one, I think it's in Luke maybe, there are two in a single bed. One will be taken, one will be sent forth. And in the Gospel of Thomas, it's much more stark. Jesus said there are two on a couch. One dies, one lives. That's the same, that's part of this saying. They've cut it out of this one. Too powerful. Jesus teaches you've got two bodies. When your body of flesh dies, feed it to the vultures. That's literally what he said. Your body of spirit leaves at the time of your death. That's when it's going to leave your body, obviously, because your body rots. Nothing there anymore. It's finished. Your spiritual body does leave. Now Matthew has taken that, perverted it, distorted it, poisoned it, by making out that there will be two men in a field, and one will be taken, and the other will be sort of, destroyed. Again, the good and the bad. Saved, destroyed, saved, destroyed. At the coming of the end of the age, the bad people won't see it coming, but Jesus is coming, and you better look out, because he's going to, destroy you all like the flood, in the flood. So it's a complete perversion, distortion, and slandering, and a destruction. That's a complete destruction of the real meaning of what Jesus is saying. He's destroyed the teaching of Jesus that you have two bodies. He's trying to make that out. There are two different men standing in the field, Bob and Harry. One will be taken, one will be left. Two women grinding at a millstone, Mary and Anne. That's a lie. He's distorting it deliberately. Jesus is saying only two women can grind at a small millstone. That's a fact. Only two people can sleep in one bed. That's a fact. But the two people have to be different bodies. A spiritual body inside a physical body. Two physical bodies can't sleep in a single bed. Two physical women can't grind at a little grinding stone. It's impossible. That you have to have two bodies to be able to do that. That's what Jesus is saying. There's a spiritual woman spiritual body grinding at the millstone in her body of flesh. There's a spiritual man standing in his physical body in the field. There's two lying in a single bed. There's a spiritual man lying in his physical body in the bed. There's two bodies. Matthew destroys it, smashes it to pieces. They don't want you knowing you've got two bodies. They want you to believe your body of dead flesh that rots and stinks, that's going to come up again at the end of the apocalypse when Jesus comes back. That's a complete false and lie to start with, false and lie, and there's no need to even say that. Why don't you believe your spiritual body's going to leave at the time you die and you're going to be in the presence of this beautiful spiritual being? It's a better incentive, isn't it, to be ready every day, because you don't know. You might die tonight, tomorrow. It's a much better and much more correct teaching of Jesus, and he warned, be ready every day to leave. You never know when the hour is. This other thing about, you'll raise up again and all this gobbledygook in Revelation. So Matthew destroys that saying. It's a real cunning, clever sort of, way they do it, contrive it. If you were a Jewish Christian, you wouldn't even pick up on this, because you're Jewish. You worship the Jewish God Yahweh. I've never worshipped Yahweh, so it's easy for me to see it. But I didn't look at these things until I had to do the work for them. Then I thought, oh, blimey, look what he's done here. I never sort of bothered about it, I knew what the truth was. I didn't bother looking at how they poisoned it. I do now, that's very interesting. So here Matthew is seen hijacking and perverting the original teaching of Jesus concerning our two different bodies that will separate out from one another at the time of our death for his own apocalyptic agenda. He uses the original teaching like a filling in a sandwich between two slices of apocalyptic bread. He has used it to distort the description Jesus gave about one woman or man having two different bodies in one into making out Jesus was talking about two completely different men or women. It's a perversion. It's wrong. It's a lie. It's a distortion. Are you listening, Jewish Christians, or are your ears still blocked up with the Old Testament? Pull those pages out of your ears. And Yahweh, put it away. And the only place and time this event occurs is when Jesus returns on the clouds at the time of the apocalypse, whereas Jesus clearly taught it occurs at the time of our death. A serious distortion, removing the importance of being ready to die any time by having your spiritual body alive and well, empowered by the loving life force of our loving Creator. You've got to understand Jesus to see the poison. If you don't understand Jesus, you'll never see this. Matthew, you'll just believe what the rubbish you're told and the lies you're told. It doesn't even make sense, but you believe it anyway, because they tell you to. Who are they? People who don't know. Matthew 15:31. Jesus supposedly said, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right." Now, that part has been again altered. The next part of the dialogue is beautiful. It's about the people who do good works, who feed the hungry, give a drink to the thirsty. I was naked and you clothed me. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. I was hungry, you fed me. I was without a home, you took me in. I was in prison, you visited me. I was sick and you cared for me. Come into the heavenly world. You are the sheep, of the shepherd. You are spiritual children of love. And the goats are the ones who are selfish, greedy, don't help anyone, etc. And they're not allowed into heaven. So Jesus gives a beautiful dialogue about the way we live selfless lives to serve others and help others in the sheep and goats parable. But this bit about when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another as the shepherd separates sheep from the goats. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he's not coming back. You're in the presence of the loving spiritual Creator the moment you die. Matthew again has made this into a later, things going to happen later on at the apocalypse. Body's going to lift up out of the dirt and stuff, or the ocean, or the shark that ate you is, all that sort of parts of your body are going to somehow come back together. That doesn't happen. So again, he's used it to twist it and turn it into an apocalyptic agenda confirmation again. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he'll sit in his glorious throne. It's much, much more likely that Jesus would have said, all the nations will be gathered before him, before our loving Creator, and she will separate them. That's probably where Jesus started the parable. That's the beginning. I'll tell you a parable. All the nations of the world will be gathered before our loving Creator, and she will separate them one from another. He didn't say the first part. Again, Matthew's putting that in. When's it going to happen? He'll just stick it on. He's altered the timeline. Happens when you die. So then we have a beautiful dialogue that follows on from this anyway. That follows about how we must all be kind, helpful and compassionate to all those in need, and those who are spiritual and filled with light and love will enter the heavenly spiritual world, and those who are devoid of spiritual light and love will have to enter into darkness to be cleansed. The normal reaping what you sow, which is the divine law which we all have to pass through to get to heaven. Nothing unusual about that. This is again a teaching with a typical, beautiful, compassionate dialogue of Jesus and a warning about reaping as we sow that has been manipulated and used to say this event will only happen at the apocalypse, when Jesus returns with his angels. Jesus taught it happens the day we die, for all of us. So be ready by following his spiritual way and words today, right now. That's what he really taught. That's what the two in the single bed's all about. Get ready, you could die any second. You'll be in the presence of the loving one. It even says so. You'll be taken to be near to someone. I wonder who? The loving spiritual Creator who gave you a spiritual body. That's where your spiritual body goes. Where does your body of earth, calcium, water and gases go? Well, guess where? Back to the earth. Matthew adds false words. More of Matthew lying. Matthew 26:64. And the high priest said to Jesus, I adjure you by the living God that you tell us whether you are the anointed one, the Son of God. Jesus said, you have said it yourself. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Let's go back. The original and only words Jesus most likely said were, are you the Son of God? They're asking him. Jesus said, you have said it yourself. Full stop. Matthew adds, nevertheless, just by the way, I'll just add something here. I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. There's the apocalyptic overlay. Matthew's slotted it in again. Anywhere he can find a place to slot it in, he does, or whoever's overwritten it. The first part of the answer would be enough for the high priest to convict him of blasphemy. He's saying, well, you said I am. That's it. No worries. I'm not disagreeing, That's all Jesus had to say, and they'd kill him. The extra words are Matthew's additions, using a quote from the book of Daniel and other Old Testament Jewish sayings. Again, the purpose is to link Jesus to the apocalypse and the revelation ruse to mislead followers of Jesus and take them away from focusing on becoming like him, to be ready to enter the heavenly spiritual world, and instead wait for him to come back to save them. 2,000 years later, we're still waiting. Meanwhile, he's in heaven waiting for us to come there. What's holding them up? Apparently they're waiting for you to go back. Oh, I'm not going back. I told them that. I told them to come here. Haven't they followed my words yet? Has someone gotten rid of the instruction manual? Oh, apparently they've put some sort of blurring over it. But some gardener in Australia is trying to clear it up for you. Oh, good. Matthew is well known as the Jewish gospel for good reason, as it is heavily loaded up with Old Testament references and prophecies and the Jewish account of the apocalypse in Daniel. He wants everyone to only see Jesus through a Jewish lens as the only chosen child of the two-headed God Yahweh, who will return at the apocalypse to kill some children and save some children, instead of the universal spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world filled only with love. And he teaches we can all become just like him by following his way of love and non-violence. So as you can see, there's a lot of these poisonous, perverted misunderstandings, distortions, misleading, false things in Matthew. He is known as the Jewish gospel. I call him the Apocalyptic Jew. But someone may have put it in on top of Matthew. I might be saying the wrong thing about Matthew, because you've got the Sermon on the Mount there. So there's some really beautiful stuff in Matthew, but then there's all this other poisonous stuff that links it to the book of Revelation. So whoever put this in, they wrote the book of Revelation, for sure. Mark fabricating apocalyptic overlay. So we'll move on to Mark. The others are far less than Matthew, but we'll see what else. And you've got to remember, Mark's was supposedly the first gospel, and Matthew and Luke drew from Mark's, and Luke drew from Matthew, and Matthew drew from Luke, and they all sort of, all the letters were passed around everywhere, so they all had copies of others' copies, and they'd include some things or shorten some things, abbreviate, extend. Matthew would pervert some things. So there was a collection of these letters going around everywhere, and they'd copy from each other and add things that they had that the others didn't have, that sort of thing. But anyway, in Mark's Gospel at 13:1, we see a near word-for-word account of what is written in Matthew's long Daniel and Revelation regurgitation at 24:3-39. So Mark does have a very similar dialogue to Matthew. Now, they don't really know the dates of all these Gospels, but they tend to say, they think Mark was the first. If that was the case, then Matthew must have copied it off Mark's. But I don't see why Matthew couldn't have stuck it into Mark. Because Mark's really only has that one, really. He doesn't bang on about it much, except for that similar dialogue, the long one that's in Matthew is in Mark. A slightly different version, but it's the same type of long, rambling, apocalypse, moon clouds, stars falling, whatever. I believe Matthew pasted it into Mark's Gospel while copying some of Mark for his own Gospel. That's what I think happened. Due to the very heavy Jewish overlays found throughout the Matthew Gospel, and only one other found in Mark, it is reasonable to conclude it was Matthew who fabricated it first. Mark is generally believed to be the earliest gospel, but it seems highly unlikely, based on the rest of Mark's gospel, that he wrote this apocalyptic ramble. He mainly concentrates more on the actual teachings of Jesus than any Jewish prophecies of Jesus returning to save all the good children and throw the bad children into hell one day. See, if you took this long rambling dialogue, which is similar to Matthew's, if you took that out of Mark, you'll only find a tiny little reference to this apocalyptic rubbish. The only other reference made in Mark, found also in Luke and Matthew, concerning Jesus coming again on the clouds of heaven at the apocalypse, is at Mark 14:62, where the high priest asks Jesus, "Are you the anointed one, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus replies, "I am." That's all Jesus had to say, and they'd kill him. He didn't have to say anything else at all. But in Mark, it's then got some extra words. "I am, and you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." That's the same addition that Matthew put in, the false addition. It's now appearing in Mark. I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't there at all, and Matthew put it in. And the long rambling, Matthew's made it a bit different, I think, to cover it up that, Mark's is a bit different to mine. Yeah, Mark had this idea too, or knew this too or something. If you took out that long rambling and this one, there's no reference in Mark to all this apocalyptic rubbish. This is the same quote from Daniel that Matthew uses to make out Jesus said this himself, when just saying "I am" would be enough to have him stoned to death for blasphemy. Again, this is to link Jesus to the Revelation apocalyptic false book, to give the Jewish book credence as an authentic book about Jesus and our loving Creator, to slander them. You see how they've done it? They've laid these trapping sort of poisonous lies in, which then links you through to the stinking slander book Revelation. So some apocalyptic Jew who did Revelation has planted these things like arrows, point this way to Revelation. They shouldn't be in the Gospels anywhere. Jesus never said these things. He's not an apocalyptic Jew. He's a person of great love. He's not going to hurt you. He's not throwing you into hell. You can go there if you want to. He's not going to throw you there. As we can see, Mark barely mentions anything about Jesus being linked to the Apocalypse book of Revelation or Daniel compared to Matthew, except for the similar account of Matthew's long rambling apocalyptic dialogue that I believe someone else inserted into his gospel. The Gospel of Mark is overwhelmingly more concerned with following the teachings of Jesus that save us now instead of waiting for him to return. It's a much more instruction book, which is what Jesus was all about. Here's the instructions of how to get to heaven. Here's the Melways, here's the roadmap. Follow this. So in Mark you've got very little. You've just got the one long rambling dialogue that's essentially the same as Matthew's but altered a bit. And then you've got this same exact, someone's cut and paste, "And you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Exactly the same as Matthew. Same words. Jesus only has to say, "I am," to the answer, and that's it. They're going to stone him. They're going to kill him. He doesn't have to add that extra bit. Luke fabricating apocalyptic overloads. Luke in 10:12 copies the Matthew dialogue at 11:20, where Jesus apparently says that various towns where he performed miracles but did not repent will be brought down to hell at the judgment day. Again, a probable reference to the apocalyptic Daniel and Revelation books. It is likely to be a Matthew origination, not Luke. See, Luke's just sort of copied and pasted Matthew's account of this apocalyptic rubbish and stuck it in his book. Luke 12:35 and 40, Jesus said, "Be dressed in readiness and keep your lamps lit." This is a correct saying of Jesus. That's correct. Be ready in your spiritual body. Be dressed in your spiritual body. Live out of that identity in readiness. And keep your lamps lit. Keep the light burning. The light of the heavenly loving life force in your spiritual body. Keep that burning. Live out of it until. So that's true. Be dressed in readiness and keep your lamps lit. This is the correct saying of Jesus. Luke adds later, "You too be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." So later on in the dialogue, inevitably, "I'm coming back." Here Luke is adding a false link to a teaching of Jesus about always keeping your inner spiritual light burning, for you do not know when you will die. Luke distorts this by adding it to infer Jesus is coming at the apocalypse, which links him to the Jewish Revelation ruse and Daniel books. They only have to put in these little snippets here and there for you to pepper them through these lies through the truth, and it's enough to make you sort of subconsciously think they must be true also. Lies amongst the truth. A few lies amongst a lot of truth gives them more credence, doesn't it? It's a con job. It's a con trick. Luke 17:22. Luke slanders heaven and Jesus. Oh, what does he say? Here Luke provides a shorter version of Matthew's 24:3-39, the long Revelation and Daniel dialogue attributed to Jesus about the apocalypse that he probably copied from Matthew or Mark, after Matthew probably inserted it into Mark. So again, you just see he's just copied and pasted it. That's what they did. They just copies things from each other and include them. Luke adds an account of Lot, where Jesus apparently says, on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just the same the day that the Son of Man is revealed. Luke's really shot this one down. I mean, here he is saying once again, brimstone and fire from heaven destroyed them all. That's the war god. That's Yahweh. That's Elijah calling fire down from heaven to kill all the soldiers in the old Jewish religion. I remind you, God's love is like the sun that rises on the good and the evil. That's who God is. Oh, no, Luke's saying here, no, brimstone from heaven's going to destroy them all. That's what happened back then. It will be just the same the day the Son of Man is revealed. So he's quoting an Old Testament war god stuff, murdering war god, and then he's saying it'll be just the same the day the Son of Man is revealed. God's going to destroy all these other bad people then, and Jesus too. Again, it's a lie. It's slandering Jesus. They shouldn't do that. These words put into the mouth of Jesus are straight out slander against who Jesus and our loving spiritual creator are in the heavenly spiritual world of love. What a load of filthy garbage to even say that the heavenly spiritual world of love is going to rain down fire and brimstone upon children. I mean, that alone is a stinking bit of filth. Just to say that. That's the war god does that. The Jewish war god does that. That's what I'm saying in this book. They've overlaid the poisonous Jewish religion and their poisonous two-headed God onto Jesus and the loving creator, and you've got to get rid of it. Cut the Jewish religion out of your life if you're a Christian. Don't look at it again for 10 years. Study Buddha's teachings instead. At least you'll learn how to clean your mind down. So these words put into the mouth of Jesus are straight out slander. They want to assassinate the true identity of Jesus as a spiritual child of love and non-violence and turn him into a military messiah of the Jewish two-headed God, who slaughters all the lost sheep who do not obey him and only saves those who do obey him. Just the sort of thing all warmongering dictators do. Not a universal shepherd loving all his sheep, whether found or lost, as Jesus himself said he was and our loving creator is. We already saw Jesus rebuke his own disciples who wanted to call down fire from heaven to kill the people in the Samaritan village who insulted Jesus. Jesus told them they had no idea who the true God really was. Fire and brimstone raining down from the sky would certainly be a satanic manifestation to harm and murder children, just as the two-headed war God Yahweh of the Jews does. And Luke is saying Jesus will return one day during the apocalypse and bring this about. Again, this links Jesus to the false Revelation book to take children of our loving Creator back to worshipping the two-headed God of the Jews. I never have, I never will. I'm a Christian. Luke also perverts the two bodies teaching. Luke also copies and includes the same ploy in Matthew to link the ending of this apocalyptic ramble to the parable of two in a field, two in one bed, and two at a millstone, implying when Jesus comes at the apocalypse, one person is taken and another person is left. by implying the two at the millstone, two in the field, and two in the one bed are two completely different people. They are destroying the true teaching of Jesus, which says we all have two bodies with us, which are different, in the one body right now. They've deliberately destroyed that. The early Christian church didn't want people knowing that. It's too powerful, that truth. Levels the field. Hierarchies shot down. Luke perverts the talents parable. In Luke 19:12, in this dialogue, Luke provides a version of the talents parable where each servant is given some money from their master to put to good use. Those that do and increase the money are rewarded, but the one who did nothing with the money has it taken from him. This is a correct saying of Jesus. He's talking about your spiritual gifts and your spiritual life and opportunities. If you don't use them, well, you don't get anywhere in spiritual sort of growth. But in the dialogue, we also read these very brutal, revengeful, false words, supposedly representing Jesus and his loving creator, that are cleverly mixed into the story. Once again, they've inserted lies in amongst the truth. It's a con job. They've taken the correct saying and then, we'll just slip this in here. It'll just fit in nicely, just to distort it. So this is the way they cleverly mix it in. A nobleman went to a distant country to receive a kingdom for himself and then return, but his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him saying, we do not want this man to reign over us. The nobleman said on his return, these enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them, bring them here and slay them in my presence. This is about the divine loving creator giving you a chance to be spiritual, and for some perverted reason Luke's slotted in this business about some of them didn't like this God or whatever and didn't want him having anything to do with them. So this God, because the nobleman represents God, he said, well, these people don't want me over them. They don't want me to reign over them. Oh, don't they? Really? They don't want me to be a king. Okay. Well, they're enemies of mine in that case, so bring them to me and kill them in front of me. Now, that parable is supposed to represent the God of Jesus. Shocking slander. Bring these enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them. They didn't want me to be their God. So bring them here and slay them in front of me. Now, what did Jesus say? Anyone who hears my words but does not follow them, I do not judge them. And what's this God of Jesus supposedly saying? What? They don't want me to be their God? Well, bring them here and kill them. That's a war God. That's Yahweh, one. The murdering, thieving war God of the Jews. Do you see how they're distorting it? Can you see it? That shouldn't be there. Luke's put it in. Here Luke has a full-on description of the revengeful, murdering, two-headed war God of the Jews who slaughters anyone who does not obey him. That's the war God, implying that Jesus and his loving spiritual creator are the ones who are going to do this when Jesus comes again at the apocalypse. A very cunning way to transform Jesus and our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world of love into the violent, revengeful, murdering, two-headed God of the Jews, and thereby take Christians back into being Jewish, worshipping their God and not the loving spiritual creator of Jesus. This is pure slander. If we choose to reject the spiritual way of Jesus and his words, he does not kill us, nor does our loving spiritual creator. Jesus said so. They just keep on loving us until we awaken to become spiritual children, no matter how long or how many lifetimes that may take. This is just slandering Jesus' own words. And the Jewish Christians just whitewash all Jesus' words. They just ignore them. What a shocking thing to do. The common apocalyptic ramble. In Luke 21:10, here we see another false version of Matthew's 24:3 and Mark 13, regurgitating the books of Daniel and Revelation in a rambling dialogue of death and destruction about the apocalypse and Jesus returning on the clouds of heaven. Obviously, the three accounts come from a shared source. It's the same dialogue, slightly altered between the three books, but it's the same general content. So it's not just one, that it's been shared, but the three of them didn't write it. Only one wrote it originally, probably Matthew. So they are really only one account with some variations added by the writers, but with the same message that links Jesus, the Prince of Peace and a loving Creator, to the false revelation ruse book. So you've got to understand, it's not like they each heard this or something or whatever. It's to do with they found this copy in Matthew's and they copied it, and then someone copied theirs, and only one of them originally probably wrote it. And they are the ones who will bring death and destruction. This is Jesus and our loving Creator in Revelations, of course. They're the ones who that they love you, but this is what's going to happen in Revelations, the Jewish book of Daniel. And they are the ones who will bring death and destruction upon mankind for not obeying them, but save those who do. Just like the two-headed God of the Jews, which is why these cunning Jewish overlays are scattered throughout the true teachings of Jesus about love, non-violence and forgiveness. That's how you do it. You con people by sticking lies in amongst a long line of truth. You pepper it with lies, but they're all links in a chain that lead you to the book of Revelation and the Jewish war God. You become a Jew. If you worship Yahweh, you're Jewish. You're not Christian. Sorry, but that's the truth. So there you go. So they are placed in amongst the true teachings of Jesus to override the spiritual truth about our loving spiritual Creator and Jesus that will set you free. Instead, they convert Christians back into being Jewish and Christian worshipping the divided two-headed God of the Jews in her name. Total slander and deliberate corruption of what Jesus really taught about her and the spiritual way of love and non-violence to reach heaven. See, these are all slanderous, false lies, poisoning who Jesus is. That's what I say, the Jewish religion is poisoning the Christian religion. Do not let the old wine anywhere near the new wine. Cut the Bible in two, rip out the book of Revelation. Jesus said, don't mix the old wine with the new. Stop doing it. John fabricating apocalyptic overlays. John makes virtually no mention of an apocalypse or Jesus coming back one day on the clouds at the time of an apocalypse. John's gospel is much more spiritual in his messages, really. His only points that wander a bit are that Jesus is a Jewish sacrificial lamb of God and was the only Son of God who can save us, and that God may judge and be wrathful at times. John's got a few little references in that way. His gospel is easily the best, as it talks about the loving spiritual way of Jesus that can transform us all from beings of flesh into being born again into beings of spiritual love. In John, we find Jesus saying, flesh only gives birth to flesh, spirit only gives birth to spirit. Marvel not that I tell you, you must be born again from above. That's why John's gospel is different. It's almost Gnostic. It's about understanding who you are. That's what Gnostic means. The Thomas Gospel is very much about Jesus saying, it's about understand who you are, wake up. And of course it's in the other Gospels to some degree, but watered down. Then they overlay the poisonous apocalypse stuff onto it. So John hasn't got much at all about it. Sacrificial Lamb of God in John 1:35. Here John has John the Baptist calling Jesus the Lamb of God as a Jewish overlay. And the next day John was standing with two of his disciples, and he looked at Jesus as he walked by and said, behold, the Lamb of God. This sees Jesus through a Jewish lens as a sacrifice to save us by taking our sins away by his death. Jesus said it is his words that save us, not his physical death on the cross. So there's a small reference to he's a lamb, a sacrificial lamb, sort of thing. But that's not correct. It's better to say he's a child of God. That's correct. A spiritual child, as we all should be. John 3:16. Here John makes Jesus out to be the only child of our loving spiritual Creator, begotten by our loving Creator. These words are not spoken by Jesus, but by the writer of the Gospel after Jesus finishes his talk with Nicodemus. So you'll find some Bibles actually recognize this and acknowledge this, that this is just the author talking. It's what they call the red letter Bibles. When you see Jesus' words in some Bibles, they're red letters. Well, some of those correct red letter Bibles have the conversation of Jesus speaking stopping at a certain point, then it goes into black. That means just the author's rambling. But in the Gospel of John, it depends what Bible you've got. But the thing is, it's not Jesus saying these extra words. So when he finishes talking with Nicodemus, so these words are added on by the author. Some people make out Jesus is saying it, but he's not. He finishes talking with Nicodemus, and then the author then says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. He who believes in him is not judged. He who does not believe in him is judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God." That's added in by the author. Jesus never said that. He never even meant that. He said quite the opposite. I don't judge anyone. And if they don't believe in my words, I won't judge them either. And here John, or the author's got, and because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son, he's judged already. If you don't believe in Jesus, well, you're already judged. You've had it. Jesus says, if you don't believe my words, I don't judge anyone. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. That's your choice. That's a false addition. Jesus is a spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator, and he awakened to his true spiritual identity by seeking the spiritual truth and its source. Once he uncovered the treasure of his spiritual identity hidden in the field of his earthly flesh and became at one with it, he then began teaching us to find it also and become like him. We can all be begotten as children of our loving spiritual creator if we search to be born again in the spirit of heavenly love from above, as Jesus taught us to do. We can all be children of God just like Jesus. This is, when I say God, the heavenly spiritual creator. I don't use the term God because it's too poisoned by the Jewish religion. However, it is true, and the Jewish Christian churches. So loving spiritual creator is what I talk about. However, it is true he was the first Jew we know of to awaken to his spiritual truth of universal love and a spiritual creator who is only love. So he, in a sense, he's the first Jew who understood there's a much more beautiful, perfect God than the two-headed God we're all following. So in that sense, he was the first loving child of God of the Jews, but not the only one. Anyone can be a child of the loving spiritual creator because we all have the same spiritual body of love in it if you bring it alive. So we can all be begotten as children of our loving spiritual creator. So, however, it is true he was the first Jew we know of to awaken to his spiritual truth of universal love, spiritual creator who is only love. John also overlays the Jewish belief that only those who believe Jesus is the Son of God will be saved and all others will be judged. Well, that's false. It's more correct to say, more correctly, all those who follow the spiritual way of Jesus will become loving, non-violent children. So will be spiritually safe, and all those who follow a darker way of evil will reap the suffering they have sown. That's more correct, because they quickly turn that into, you don't believe in Jesus? Oh, you're going to hell then. Oh, I've heard these Jewish Christians say that. Oh man, I just cringe when I hear that. So that's the trouble with that. The dialogue's not well translated. It applies to all children on the earth, regardless of religion or no religion. The spiritual way of Jesus is a universal way of love and non-violence and can be found in many different belief systems to varying degrees. And many people who don't know anything about Jesus will go to heaven. Don't worry about that. If they've got the characteristics of a spiritual child of love and non-violence, love, compassion, forgiveness, equanimity, generosity, and care for those worse off than themselves, you'll meet them in heaven if you're like that. Whether you're a Christian or not, they'll be there. They're a child of the loving spiritual creator because they're spiritual. John 5, they've got the characteristics, the disposition, the new covenant. John 5:21 and 12 has Jesus say, "For not even the Father judges anyone, but he has given all judgment to the Son. He who honors me honors him, and he who does not honor me does not honor him. I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. If anyone hears my sayings and does not keep them, I do not judge them." So Jesus is simply saying, look, I'm just going to show you the way to become spiritual so you don't die after death and you're in your spiritual body fully awake and alive and healthy and you'll go into the spiritual world. But I'm not going to do anything to you if you don't do that. You do it to yourself by not becoming spiritual. You see what he's saying? I don't have to judge anyone. I'm just trying to help you come to heaven, which is a spiritual world, trying to tell you you've got a spiritual body inside you, but it's only love, so stop hurting people and hating and all the rest of it. Stop worshipping money, move into the spiritual identity. Oh, become spiritual, you're full of love. Excellent. If you don't do it, well, okay, then you won't make it to heaven, but I'm not judging you over it. You just won't realise it. That's all. You won't become spiritual. That's all he's saying. If anyone hears my sayings and does not keep them, I do not judge them. That's not the war God of Yahweh, is it? You see, they're poisoning his words here and there, but you've got to know Jesus to see the poison, the lies. If you don't know Jesus, you won't see the lies. The Jewish Christians will lie to you all the time about this. They shouldn't do it. That's wrong. They're brainwashed, those, indoctrinated. We reap as we sow. Jesus and our loving spiritual creator have no need to judge us. We are our own judges, and the spiritual law of reaping what we sow is always in existence. They just want us to become spiritual children and follow the way of love home to heaven. John slanders our loving creator. In John 3:36, here we see another Jewish overlay of judgment put onto Jesus. He who believes in the Son has eternal life, but he who does not obey the Son will not see life, but the wrath of God. The first part is correct, because it refers to following the words of Jesus that give us true spiritual life. He who believes in the Son has eternal life. What he's saying is, if you believe in Jesus, you're going to believe in his way. His way awakens your spiritual body, which is eternal, and you get into it by following his way, and you end up in heaven, eternally alive. So he who believes in what Jesus is teaching and who he is, a spiritual child of love from heaven, if you believe in him and his way and who he is and become like him, you'll have eternal life. But he who does not obey the Son will not see life in heaven, but the wrath of God. That's wrong. That's incorrect. It should say, but will reap what they sow. That's what it should say. They put in the wrath of God. That's not correct. That's incorrect. You'll reap what you sow. She doesn't have to do anything to you. Jesus and the loving creator can't hurt anyone. They're only love. You hurt yourself. There is a divine law of reaping what you sow, and it does exist. But you don't have to worry if you're full of love. That's really what's happening, He who does not obey the Son will not see life. Well, if you're going to be a beast of the flesh, murderer, killer, like the warmongers in the world at the moment, you're not entering heaven. Heaven is the true spiritual life world. That's the world of true life. Well, you won't see life in heaven if you're a filthy, stinking murderer. At the moment, Netanyahu, Putin, Hamas, whoever the latest murderers are and all their armies, they won't see life in heaven. They can't. They can't get in. That's what Jesus is saying. Now, the wrath of God, that shouldn't be there. That's altered. It should be rather, either that's been just tacked on and he never said it anyway, or if he would have said anything, they will not see life if they don't follow my way, but will reap what they sow. Something like that. The first part is correct because it refers to following the words of Jesus that give us true spiritual life. But then we see the loving creator painted as a revengeful God of the Jews who punishes those who do not obey him. That's incorrect. Slandering your loving creator whose light and love shines on the good and the evil. I have to keep reminding you, until they awaken to their spiritual life that she offers them. You've got to always go back to Jesus' description of the beautiful spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world. Her love shines on the good and the evil, on the just and the unjust. She's kind to the ungrateful and the evil. That's who God really is. This business about they'll see the wrath of God, that's Jewish overlays, poisoned, false. Thomas Gospel, there's no apocalyptic fabrications at all. You see, that's why they had to destroy it. It was too truthful. There are no apocalypse or Jesus coming back on the cloud sayings in the Thomas Gospel at all. That's why they had to destroy it. So the lies and the others could be believed. They could con the followers, you see. That's why they destroyed it. It's too truthful. There are virtually no heavy Jewish overlays. There's almost no heavy Jewish overlays either about sacrificial lamb and all that stuff. His blood saved you. That's not there either. It is all about his universal teachings and words of love and understanding them to transform and become just like him and follow him to where he has gone. The heavenly spiritual world of love beyond all pain and suffering, which is exactly the intention of what his teachings were all about. His words can awaken us into our spiritual life while still in a temporary body of flesh and get ready to leave on our own judgment day. The day our body of flesh dies. That's your judgment day, not an apocalyptic day. That is the apocalypse for me. When my heart stops beating, the apocalypse is upon me, the judgment day. Is my spiritual body alive and clean and well and healthy and full of love? That's all that matters. Then I can walk across the river, and as Jesus said, well, you're not going to be judged for any bad things you've done because you're nice and clean. So come on in. Netanyahu and Putin roll up with all they're covered in their filthy murder. Oh, sorry, you'll have to sink in the river and be washed downstream. You can't come in. You judge yourself, you see. The river is perfect justice, the divine spiritual law of the river of reaping what you sow that we have to cross. It's neutral. It'll just give back to you what you gave to other children. It's a divine spiritual law. It affects everyone. You can't see it, but it's just like gravity. You know, saints and sinners in this world, we're all under the effect of gravity. And when you die, we all have to cross the same river of reaping what you sow. And it affects us according to reaping what we have sown. Whatever measure you gave out, it'll be given back to you. You can't beat that justice. So there's no apocalyptic fabrications in Thomas. That's why they had to destroy it. His words can awaken us into our spiritual life while still in our temporary body of flesh and get ready to leave on our own judgment day. The day our body of flesh dies, not some book of Daniel and Revelation Jewish death and destruction apocalypse time in an unknown future with Jesus and our loving Creator coming back to slaughter her lost children and save those who were good. That is the Jewish book of Daniel. The book of Revelation is a Jewish Old Testament book. It should not be in the New Testament. It's a filthy lie, slandering Jesus and the loving Creator. This is why the Gospel of Thomas was banned by the strong contingent of Jewish writers who had another agenda, to make Jesus the only one who can become fully spiritual, the Jewish Messiah, and the only one who is a spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world of love, and place him on an ivory tower above us all, and emphasize his death on the cross as a sacrificial Jewish lamb to pay for our sins, instead of focusing on his universal words of love and non-violence that awaken us all to become the same as him. They allow you to worship him, but never believe you can be exactly like him in every way. Only he is sin-free. Yet all his dialogues are about setting us free, all free, from being slaves to sin, by following his words and becoming like him. They have cleverly undermined his teachings he gave us to prevent us all being empowered by the same loving spiritual life force in our spiritual bodies that he found within himself from our loving Creator in heaven, to set us free from the flesh and to spiritually awaken, just as he did, into a new life. In Matthew 10:25, Jesus says, "It is sufficient for the pupil to become like his teacher. And whoever believes in me and my teachings, you will be able to do these works I do, and even greater ones than these." You'll not only become like me, but you can do even bigger things than I've done. His teachings are not exclusive like the Jewish ones he tried to change. They are a universal, inclusive spiritual truth found in all of us throughout many religions and ways of life that can save us all to heaven and bring peace on earth if we only follow his spiritual way of love and non-violence. God is love, love is life. Love is all there really is. The rest is just confusion. Love is all there really is. The rest is just delusion. So I hope you can see through this just general descriptions I've given you and the proofs I've provided, the apocalyptic, poisonous overlays and lies that are threaded in amongst the Gospels of truth, of love and non-violence, and you've got two bodies, and then one spiritual. Body of flesh dies, it's dead, it's finished. Your spiritual body is the only one that leaves. It has to be clean. Get into it. Become spiritual by following my words. Awaken your spiritual body of love and non-violence. Commit to it. Stop being dualistic. Don't hate and love. Just have the love coming out of you to everyone in whatever way they need. You will become awoken. You'll be filled with the loving spiritual life force from heaven. You will be a living spiritual body, ready to leave your body of flesh when it stops working. If you don't do that, he says, you could be in great difficulty, particularly if you're living out of the flesh only, bit greedy, bit selfish, don't care much about people, not a warmonger. But then you can become more selfish, a bit rude. I hate some people, like those. You can become racist. It slowly gets bigger and bigger, this filth you cover yourself in, until you are the satanic warmongers of the world we see today. In Russia, Gaza, Israel, the West Bank, Ukraine, and wherever else. You're covered in filth. You can't get into heaven. Your spirit can't get in. Impossible. You've locked yourself out. So the apocalyptic overlays, that's all about the book of Jewish religion, Daniel. The book of Revelation is the book of Daniel. That's what it is. Someone's taken it out, dumped Jesus and the loving creator in the middle of it, stuffed them in there amongst all the violence, murder, killing, slaughter, making children's bodies sick, starving people to death, which it says Jesus is going to do. I mean, it's breathtaking. What audacity to put that, to try to put that in with the Gospels of Jesus, who's love and non-violence, who feeds the hungry, who heals the sick. What audacity to put that stinking, filthy, obvious, slanderous lie right next to Jesus. But 2026, it's in all the Jewish Christian Bibles of the world. Satan is very cunning, isn't he? Very powerful, very persuasive, very devious. How can you believe that load of crap and be running the Catholic Church, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Pentecostals, the Mormons, and everyone else under the sun who's a Jewish Christian? How can you possibly allow that stinking book to insult Jesus, my good friend, my lifesaver, who leads me to heaven, and the beautiful, loving, spiritual creator, and she is only love and won't hurt anyone? And you've got Jesus putting sicknesses on children, starting wars, inciting wars so men kill each other. I hope this video, if anyone's watched it who's in the Jewish Christian hierarchy anywhere in the world, I hope you receive some sort of inspiration coming into you from the true loving spiritual creator and Jesus himself in heaven to sort of wake you up. I'm just a gardener. My job is to share the truth and smash the poisonous Jewish effect that's poisoning the beautiful teachings and way of Jesus and the loving spiritual creator of love and non-violence. My task now is to cut the influence of the Jewish religion off Jesus and the way of Jesus of love and non-violence. That's my task. I can provide some genuine facts there. They're just his words. And you only have to look at the Old Testament to see the war god. But if you want to somehow deny that truth right in front of your face, you really need to get away to a quiet place to think about this by yourself. Cut the Bible in two, rip out the book of Revelation, and just read the words of Jesus for about 10 years. Then go back and read the Jewish religion if you want to. Once you know Jesus correctly, as I always have, even since a little child, he's love and non-violence. If you see me, Philip, he says to Philip, you will see God. If you see me, you see God. God is like me. I'm like a child of God. God doesn't hurt anyone, and neither do I. I only come here to save children to heaven. She only wants to save us to heaven. She's not going to hurt us. We hurt ourselves and we hurt other children. They never hurt us. I can only hope this book gets taken up somewhere, and it really should be a study book for the heads of the Catholic Church and all the Jewish Christian churches, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Mormons, the Jehovah's. They should get my book on the teachings and use it as a study group, have a discussion group around the book. It's not I'm not a writer, an author, or a writer. My English language isn't eloquent and fantastic and brilliant. It's pretty just down to earth and straightforward. But the thing is, it's truthful. And it's very difficult to deny what I've written. You'd have a hard time doing it based only on the words of Jesus and who he described God is. That's the key to it, you see. He told us God's love shines on the good and the evil. There's the problem. Yahweh's love doesn't shine on the good and the evil, does it? Can you see how obvious this stinking filth is that they've put onto Jesus? How stinkingly obvious it is? Can you smell the stench of the lies that the Jewish Christians are teaching children? All you have to do is let the Jews have their two-headed God. Just cut the Bible in two. If they want to have that problem, that's their problem. I'm not a Jew, and no Christian should be a Jew, and no Christian should worship Yahweh. You're worshipping two different gods. The problem is all Jewish Christian churches have beautiful charities and loving, caring people in them through the fact that Jesus is there. But they haven't thrown him out, he's there. And so is the divine loving God of heaven, because Jesus is there, so she has to be there. But you've got these other two gods of the Jewish religion there as well. So he said, whatever you do, don't mix this new wine into the old wine. You'll make everything a lot more confusing. You won't know who she really is. And they all did it. I never did. I'm lucky. I was never Jewish. Well, there you go. The apocalyptic overlays on Jesus are completely false. Jesus was not an apocalyptic Jew. Even Bart Ehrman says he was, but Bart doesn't look at these slightly more detailed aspects of who he really was and what he was really saying. It's one thing to have a Greek knowledge of the Greek language and all that sort of thing, and if you don't, look at any of the words being possibly false, well, you're in big trouble. But if you've got a brilliant knowledge of the Greek language and you just look at that only, but you don't look at what Jesus was really teaching about a spiritual inner experience that you and I can have, because that's what he was teaching. You have to see that first and understand that's what he was. His words were all about that. Only when you realise that, only when Bart Ehrman, for example, realises that if you just look at the really good words, Bart, the loving ones that transform you like Buddhas, and meditate on them, it will awaken this beautiful spiritual clear-light mind in you, which then does connect you to another world and life after death, but it's only love. It's only when you experience that perfect loving mind yourself, based on Jesus' words that are the correct, truthful words that transform you into love, then you realise these other Greek words here and here and here and all this other apocalyptic stuff, and then the book of Revelations, immediately you go, oh, well, that doesn't fit. That's a square peg in a round hole, that stuff. That doesn't fit. It doesn't fit who he is. So if you don't know who he is, but you know all the Greek language, you'll get it wrong. If you know who he is and don't even know the Greek language, but you've got the English translations, they stand out like sore thumbs. They're all wrong. They don't fit him. That's not him. Why are they saying that? So that's why I had to look into it. So I've only got a general historical knowledge and layman's sort of ability to write. But the thing about being a layman, who did Jesus choose to teach? Fishermen. Probably couldn't read or write, but they were simple people. Fishermen. I'm a gardener, I'm a simple person. But he couldn't teach the highfalutin, Jewish theological leaders who knew all the gobbledygook Jewish religion. There was no point going to them. They would have had, as the Buddhists would say, if they've got a cup full of lies and rubbish, The Buddhist monk can't tip the truth in about the clear light mind because the cup's already full. You've got to tip that out first. Then the Buddhist monk can teach about the Buddha's teachings of clearing your mind out to understand your true identity as a spiritual child of light and love, which is exactly what Jesus taught and Buddha taught as well. But Jesus did go higher than Buddha. He stood on Buddha's shoulders when he made the love in action. Go and serve the poor and the sick and the homeless on the street. Love them. Touch them. Hold them. Pick them up. Like Mother Teresa, going into the streets of Calcutta, picking up the sick who are dying in the gutters, while people walk by. She is the example of the true teachings of Jesus. And many children like her that we never hear about. She was just a sort of a standout public figure. But there are many countless souls who follow Jesus. They're all in Jewish Christian churches because there aren't any Christian churches. They're all Jewish. But they don't worship Yahweh. They don't care about the book of Revelations. They're just living a beautiful, loving life, loving their family. They believe in God of Jesus. They believe in Jesus. And they do focus mostly on Jesus. But unfortunately, many of the churches are getting the children to heavily focus on the Jewish two-headed God Yahweh and the book of Revelations. I've been in them. That's all they talk about. Well, that's really, really bad. They're Jews. They're synagogues. They shouldn't have any of that talk at all. They don't need it. You just need the words of Jesus. So love your way to heaven or hate your way to hell. They're both there. The choice is yours. Or as that famous Led Zeppelin song, Stairway to Heaven, there are two roads you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. I hope all the evil children in the world wake up before they die. Hell does exist, but so does heaven. Beauty. I'll try to go there. And I'll try to tell them, you're going the wrong way. Come back. Don't go down that darkness there. You'll be sorry. We laugh about it, but what they're doing is so evil, it's no laughing matter. However, what can we do? Pray for them. Okay, well, there's the apocalyptic stuff. It's a long video. Sorry. I ramble on. I just love talking about it, but hopefully later on, particularly if I can recover from this neurotoxic fungal infection in my body, then I'll be able to do a much more succinct, concise, and a more beautiful dialogue. And I'll do another edition of both the books, the Gospels, and the teachings later on, perhaps, hopefully this year, perhaps. But I had to get something out there, at least some truth out there, to try to help destroy the poisonous effects of the Jewish religion that it's having on the Jewish Christians. They've got to cut ties with the Jewish religion completely and just leave it as a separate, different religion with a different God. Hindu, different. Buddhist, different. Quran, different. And have a look at all the different religions who have some love in them. But stick to the words of Jesus, because if you're a Christian, you only need him. He'll get you there. So there you go. I'll let you go if you bothered to watch it all this way. Blimey. Who would do that? You must have absolutely nothing to do with your life. Nothing better. No, watch a little bit at the start if you have watched it at all to the end, and watch a bit more. Anyway, I just put this truth out there. I hope it helps someone who's confused about what the Jewish Christians are teaching you. They are teaching you lies. The book of Revelation is a filthy, stinking slander. Rip it out. It's got nothing to do with Jesus. That's Satan coming on the clouds, and that's the war god in heaven. The Jewish religion worships two gods. It's not monotheistic. They worship a stinking, filthy, murdering war god, the same as the Romans, Mars, Ares, Sekhmet. They're all stinking war gods, don't get me wrong. Not just the Jewish. They all were. You don't worship that God, but the Jews still do. That's the problem. And there's the God of love in the Old Testament, but it's a limited understanding. Jesus had the full understanding. I was going to write a little sort of song. I haven't got round to it. My voice is pretty croaky from the fungus. But after I finished the book about the truth, I was going to write a little song, something like this. Sorted it all out. I hope I left no doubt. beginning to the end, you're only love. You were only love, and all love comes from above. I hope I sorted it all out for you. I finished the teachings book on Christmas Day. It can be done better, but that's the best I can do at the moment. And I said to him, "Happy birthday! This is for you and the loving spiritual creator. I hope you like it." So it'll be available around the world on the 11th of January. It'll take a week or two to filter through to Amazon and other places, but it'll be available. The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged. Anyway, that's my song. I hope I sorted it all out. I hope I left no doubt. You're only love. I must finish that song. Bye for now.